Our forbidden love was a secret until his wife found out. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to get involved in a situation like this. Honestly, if you told me a year ago that I'd be writing this, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a way of throwing you into situations you'd never imagine, and mine was no exception. It all started at my new job. I'm 27, single, and work as a graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing agency. When I joined the team, I was excited but nervous. I'd just moved to a new city for this job and didn't know anyone. That's where he came in. His name was Marcus. Marcus was the creative director, and the moment I saw him, I could tell he had a kind of effortless charm. Late 30s, confident, with this energy that just drew people in. He wasn't movie star handsome or anything, but there was something magnetic about him. The way he smiled, the way he spoke like he genuinely cared about what you were saying. And let me tell you, in the creative world, having someone like that as a mentor is rare. At first, everything was strictly professional. He'd help me refine my designs, give me pointers, and make me laugh during meetings when everyone else seemed stressed out. I found myself looking forward to those little moments. But I wasn't blind. I noticed the ring on his finger, and I knew he was married. I didn't think much of it, at least not consciously. He'd occasionally mention his wife, Emily, in passing. From the outside, they seemed perfect. A couple who travelled together, had a nice house, and even a dog. But as the weeks went on, Marcus started opening up to me more. It began innocently enough. We'd stay late working on projects, and he'd talk about how things weren't as picture-perfect as they seemed. He said Emily and he had grown distant, that they were more like roommates than partners. I felt bad for him. He never spoke ill of her, but you could hear the pain in his voice when he talked about how their marriage had lost its spark. I should have walked away right then. I should have kept it professional, but I didn't. Maybe it was the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Maybe it was the way he made me feel seen, like he truly valued me, not just as a designer, but as a person. One night, everything changed. We'd stayed late again, working on a campaign that had to be finished by morning. The office was empty, and we were exhausted. As we sat there, going over the final details, our hands brushed when we both reached for the same pen. It sounds cliché, I know, but the moment our eyes met, there was this tension. It was like everything else faded away. "I shouldn't do this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But then he kissed me. I wish I could say I stopped it. I wish I could say I pulled away and told him to go home to his wife. But I didn't. I kissed him back. From that moment on, we were in too deep. It wasn't just physical, though the physical part was intense. It was emotional. We'd sneak around, finding excuses to see each other outside of work. We'd meet at a little cafe across town where no one knew us, or at his friend's empty apartment when he was out of town. Every moment felt stolen, like we were in our own little bubble, separate from the rest of the world. But the bubble couldn't last forever. I started feeling guilty, though not for the reasons you'd think. It wasn't just about Emily. It was about me. I hated the version of myself I was becoming. Sneaky, paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder. I wasn't raised like this. My parents taught me better, and yet, here I was, knowingly hurting someone I'd never even met. Then there was Marcus. As much as I cared about him, I started noticing cracks in the version of himself he presented to me. He'd promised me that he and Emily were on the brink of separation, but weeks turned into months, and nothing changed. He still went home to her every night. He still played the role of the devoted husband on social media. I told myself I'd end it, but every time I tried, he'd pull me back in with his words. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only thing keeping him afloat, like he needed me to survive. and maybe I wanted to feel needed. Maybe I liked it too much to let go. Everything came crashing down on a random Tuesday. I was at work, going about my day, when Emily showed up at the office. At first, I didn't realize who she was. She was stunning. Tall, graceful, with this air of confidence that made me feel small in comparison. She walked straight past reception and into Marcus's office without knocking. The shouting started almost immediately. The walls in our office are thin, so everyone heard it. At first it was muffled, but then her voice got louder. "How long has this been going on, Marcus? Do you think I'm stupid?" My stomach dropped, I knew. I don't know how she found out. Maybe she saw a text, maybe she followed him. But she knew. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. People were whispering, trying to pretend they weren't listening, but I was frozen. Then she stormed out of his office, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. "You," she said, pointing a perfectly manicured finger in my direction. "It's you, isn't it?" I didn't say anything. What could I say? "Do you even know what you've done?" she continued, her voice shaking. "I gave up everything for him. I supported him when he had nothing. And this is how he repays me?" I wanted to apologize, to tell her I never meant to hurt her, but the words wouldn't come. Marcus tried to calm her down, but it was too late. She turned to him and said, "You deserve each other," before walking out the door. The office was silent after that. No one knew where to look or what to say. Marcus went after her, leaving me standing there, feeling like the worst person in the world. The fallout was brutal. Marcus took a leave of absence, and rumours spread like wildfire. Some people at work were sympathetic, saying things like, "It takes two to tango," while others looked at me like I was the devil incarnate. As for Marcus and me, it didn't last. Once the dust settled, I realised that what we had wasn't love. It was escapism. He wanted a distraction from his failing marriage, and I wanted someone to make me feel special. But in the end, all we did was destroy each other. I wish I could say I learned some grand lesson from all of this, but the truth is I'm still figuring it out. All I know is that I never want to be in a situation like that again. Some lines just aren't meant to be crossed, no matter how tempting they may seem. Update. Our forbidden love was a secret until his wife found out. I didn't expect so many people to react to my story, let alone ask for an update. Honestly, I debated whether to share more because revisiting all of this still feels like peeling off a scab, but I guess I owe it to myself to lay it all out there. After the fallout at work, I took some time off. My boss, though polite, strongly suggested it was in everyone's best interest for me to work remotely while things cooled down. That was their nice way of saying, "We can't have this scandal playing out in the office anymore." I was humiliated, but also relieved. I couldn't face the stares or whispers anymore. As for Marcus, things got even messier than I imagined. He didn't come back to the office. Word got out that Emily had filed for divorce, and the rumour mill went into overdrive. Someone claimed she'd hired a private investigator after suspecting he was cheating, and that's how she found out about us. I don't know if that's true, but it made sense considering how she showed up at work like she already had all the evidence. A few weeks after Emily left him, Marcus called me. It was the first time we'd spoken since everything blew up. I didn't recognise the number at first, and when I heard his voice, my heart dropped. He sounded broken, like a shell of the confident man I once knew. He apologised, profusely, for dragging me into his mess, saying I didn't deserve the backlash or the blame. Then he said something that caught me off guard. "Emily wants to meet with you." I froze. Apparently, during one of their many arguments, Emily told him she wanted to talk to me face to face. "I think she just wants closure," he said. "She's not angry anymore." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect myself from the sheer awkwardness of sitting across from the woman whose life I helped unravel. But another part of me, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of curiosity, wanted to hear her out. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop a week later. I arrived early, nervous as hell, and almost left twice before she walked in. She was just as stunning as I remembered, but this time there was a softness to her that caught me off guard. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. After sitting down, she looked me in the eye and said, "Why did you do it?" I didn't know how to answer. I mumbled something about not intending for it to happen, that I didn't mean to hurt her, but she cut me off. "You didn't think about me, did you?" she said, her voice calm but firm. "You didn't think about the years I put into that marriage, or the nights I stayed up wondering where he was when he came home late. You were just thinking about yourself." I couldn't argue with her. She was right. But then, something unexpected happened. Her tone shifted and she said, "I'm not here to make you feel worse than you already do. I just needed to see you, to remind myself that this wasn't all my fault." We ended up talking for over an hour. She told me about their marriage, how things had been falling apart long before I came into the picture. She admitted that Marcus wasn't the man she thought he was, and she blamed herself for ignoring the red flags for so many years. By the end of our conversation, I realized that Emily and I had more in common than I ever thought possible. Before we parted ways, she said something that stuck with me ever since. "I don't forgive you, but I don't hate you either. You were just another symptom of a bigger problem. I hope you learn from this, and I hope I do too." As for Marcus, I haven't spoken to him since that call. Last I heard, he moved to a different city and started working for a smaller agency. Part of me still wonders if he's repeating the same patterns with someone else, but that's not my business anymore. As for me, I'm trying to rebuild. I quit my job a few months after everything happened and started freelancing. It's been tough, but I needed a fresh start. I've also started therapy, and let me tell you, unpacking all of this with a professional has been eye-opening, to say the least. If there's one thing I've taken away from all of this, it's that actions have ripple effects, even when you don't intend them to. What felt like a private whirlwind between Marcus and me ended up affecting so many people in ways I couldn't have imagined. Do I regret it? Absolutely. But I can't go back and change the past. All I can do is try to be better moving forward, and hope that someday I'll fully believe I deserve that second chance,